Good morning. It's Morning Mindset, and it has been forever since I've done one of these. And I have to apologize because I've been really committed to doing these. And the last 2-3 weeks, I just have had no space or capacity to do them. And truth be told, it's for a couple of reasons. One, it was the final push to get my second edit of my newest book, Dream I Dare You, to my editor, and that was like giving birth. And so I found myself being really easily distracted. You know what I mean? Like, here's the one thing that you want to do and you want to accomplish, but you're finding like a million other things that you can do that's not that one thing. And I had to call a spade a spade. So I got really focused on finishing that, which I did. And then, like, life is just so crazy right now. And I think that I was pulling back and retreating a little bit to really identify where I stand in all of this. And maybe you're like me, and some days you feel great and on top of the world and really clear. And then the next day you're like, I don't got this. I don't know what our world is doing. I don't know where I stand. And so this like up down roller coaster can be really, really intense. And so today I wanted to talk about this up and down roller coaster. You know what I mean? Like, our world as a whole has been completely flip-flopped and upside down. And I think that we have been exposed to so much change that is not ending. It's not going anywhere. And I think we have to understand how we adapt to change. Otherwise, I hate to break it to you, but I don't feel like this ends well if we don't understand individually how to renew our minds, how to get focused on what's next, and how to adapt to change. And so we're going to talk about that today. We're going to talk about how do you adapt to change in a healthy way, in a heart-based way, right? A wholehearted approach, especially when this is not change that you choose, right? Like, it's one thing to start a business because you choose to. It's one thing to lose weight because you choose to, right? Like, it's one thing to make a change that you're proactively choosing. It's another when change starts to happen around you and you're not prepared. Like, you didn't subscribe. Nobody like raised their hand for COVID. Nobody raised their hands for all these protests and riots. Like, nobody's raising their hand for these things. So what do you do when so much change is happening around you that you didn't choose? We're going to talk about that. And I think it becomes very obvious. So I got away for the week. I went to the lake house. And it was the most amazing week that I've had in a long time. And I think here's why, is that in the midst of the times that we're in right now, you can feel like you're in this black hole. You know what I'm saying? Like this vortex, and it's sucking us in and it's like driving us down, right? Like, same routines. We're wearing masks. We can't do what we used to do. We don't really know how to plan for what's next. We don't know if we should be afraid. We don't know if we should be hopeful. The news changes. PPP loans are changing. The economy is changing. Our global stance on this virus is changing. Like, it's almost kind of like you're in this black hole. And I didn't realize that I was in one until I got 7 days away from this black hole vortex. And I realized, holy crap, like, this is a lot, people. And I would say that I'm really strong in mind and spirit. Like, I have a really solid mindset. And so I wanted to do my part in serving you and helping you understand how to adapt to this change. So when you start to experience change, crisis, or a lot of unknowns, right? Like, there's a lot of uncertainties in all areas of our life. What is our careers going to look like? What is our schools going to look like for our kids? How are we going to interact as people? What is the industry going to do? Right? Like, there's so many unknowns right now. And as you start to wade the waters of unknown and we start to go into uncharted territory and we start to move into a direction that we've never been, you have to understand the power of acclimating. You have to understand what it is that's going to cause you to sabotage yourself and your efforts in your family, in your career, in your mindset. You have to understand why we as people will sabotage our own process, our own pursuits. Because if you don't, you'll sit with the negative repercussions of messing it all up and not knowing why. So let's talk about acclimating. when you go from one familiar to an unfamiliar, you've never been there before. You don't know what it's going to feel like. You don't know what to expect. And your levels of uncertainty go through the roof. Now, most of us really like to be certain. We like to be certain. We like to be in control. We like to intellectually understand something so we can compartmentalize it and put it in a box. That way we can live in safety, security, and stability, right? Well, the problem is that if we're only so focused on safety, security, stability, we can't ever get free, because freedom lives in a totally different place, right? Like change and growth lives in a completely different place than safety, security, stability. So you have to start this process by asking yourself, what do I want most? The world is changing. My life is changing. This area specifically is changing. What do I want most? Do I want safety, security, stability? Or do I want change, growth, and freedom? Okay. If you're like me, you'll resist that question a little bit until you go, no, I want change. I want growth. I want freedom. Okay, great. Then how do I move from a world that I've understood for so long into a world that I don't yet know, right? How do I move into a place in this area of my life, or just in generally speaking, into a place that I don't yet know? You have to understand how to acclimate. Now, I wrote about this in my book, and if you want more of this, I will put my email address in the comments of this video. I want you to email me directly and I will send you this chapter of my book, because I go in depth into this concept, okay? Now, just like the climbers on Everest, they want to summit, okay? They want to climb to the very peak of Everest, right? And that takes anywhere from 40 to 60 days on average, and it is a 29,000 foot climb. It's 29,000 feet tall, okay? And so what we want to envision here is that where you're trying to go, right, to adopt this new way of thinking, this new way of living, right? Or maybe the top of summit is a new career. Maybe the top of summit is lost weight. Maybe the top of a summit is just more connection and passion in your marriage. Okay, maybe it's the ability to like conquer homeschooling this year, right? Like the top of your summit, whatever that is, that's your goal. That is your dream. Okay. Now, if we compare our climb to that of a climber climbing Everest, we have to understand that we don't just summit overnight. This doesn't happen in an instant. And sometimes I think the reason that we get so frustrated is because change isn't happening fast enough. But there is a reason why. Is that in order to get to the thing that you want most, in order to sustain these crazy times and to come out the other side of it looking better, in order to accomplish your dream, the top of your summit, you don't want just to obtain it, you want to sustain it. You want to get through it and stay through it. You want to get to the top of that peak and sustain what you've just obtained. You want to get to having a passionate, like totally connected marriage, but you want to keep that, right? So the way that we do this is understanding the principles of acclimating. Now, when these climbers start to actually climb up to the summit, they have to have 4 base camps. They have to summit 4 base camps along the way. Why? In order to acclimate. They actually will come to their first base camp. They will go past the base camp. They will come back down, and then they will settle in order to acclimate. And this is the most fascinating part of this whole journey, is that in theory, we all know there's no way that you could physically get to the top of the summit of Everest in one go. But what we don't recognize is that the same is true in life. We have to acclimate along the way, just as the climbers on Everest do. Why? Because if we go too fast, we will fail. If we go too fast and we start going and we start encountering new levels of understanding, we start moving into greater levels of change, we start growing too fast, what happens is the external parts are changing, but the internal parts are not. That's why people can win the lottery or they make millions of dollars as a football player only to lose it 3, 4, 5 years later, is because things around them started to change, but the things within them were not changing. Here's my question to you right now. There is so many things changing on the outside of us, for good, bad, indifferent. Everything is changing. And my question to you is, are you changing on the inside in order to be bigger and better than the things that are changing on the outside? Or are you just letting this outside change dictate how you do life? Because if you're like me and we go too long unchecked with all the things that are changing around us, but we're not consciously changing the things that are within us, we will not sustain it. It's why protests are turning into riots. It's why the spirit of anger and fear and worry and doubt is at an all-time high, is because there's so much changing in the world around us, and we are not doing our part to change the things within us. It's the same way that these climbers are climbing and summiting Everest, right? To my point. They go to one base camp and then they take off gear that doesn't serve them. They rest. They do an active rest to keep their body engaged, but they're actively resting their mind, body, and spirit, getting ready for where they're going. They're eating good, healthy nutrition because they recognize that their immune system has to be on point to take them to where they've never been. I'm wondering, are we acclimating? Are we taking the time to go, holy shit, like this is crazy. I've never experienced anything like this. Maybe you've lost your job and financially you've flip-flopped. Maybe now kids are home. You've never been a full-time stay-at-home parent. You're doing homeschool. You're trying to work. You're doing all the things and you're going, whoa, wait a minute. I don't know how to do this. Maybe you're looking at the way that you spend your time in your schedule dramatically different. And you're like, I don't even know what I'm supposed to do anymore because everything I've ever done has been whitewashed. Like someone has cleared my slate and I'm not totally sure where to go from here. This is the time that you have to slow down for a minute and you've got to acclimate. What does that look like? Well, first and foremost, when you start to realize that you're triggering and you start to feel a little out of control and worry and fear and overwhelm and anxiety and judgment and criticism, all of those triggers, those are triggers. They're emotional triggers that are telling us you better slow down to catch that you are going too fast, right? Like you're being exposed too much, that your capacity is being stretched in ways that you've never thought before. Those are emotional triggers that are going to tell you slow down. You have to catch the triggers, okay? Once you catch those triggers and you start to go, oh geez, I don't know that I'm doing this well. I don't know that my mindset is where it needs to be. My emotions are not where they're supposed to be. That is a sign that you need to acclimate. How do you acclimate? You create space. You have to learn how to create space. There's a reason in the Bible that it says, be still and know. That's what the lake was for me this week. Number one, it was a total pattern interrupt. It got me in a completely different environment and had me looking at life and doing my day-to-day very differently, which is always great because it gets us to be conscious. You need to be conscious. You need to be still. You need to take inventory of what's going on around you, and you need to start asking yourself internal questions like, what do I need to change internally in my belief systems and in the way that I'm approaching my life so that I can sustain what's going on in the world around me? Even if you've lost your job, you need to check back in with yourself to go, who is it that I need to become to find the next step in my career or the next step in my business that can really manifest what I'm here on the planet to manifest. If you're looking at homeschooling, you're going, shoot, I don't know that I have it within me to do all the things that this is going to require. Yes, you do. You just need to let your insides catch up with your outsides. You need to take the time to understand, what do I need to change in here so that I can maintain and obtain the things out here? These times are unprecedented, and my fear is that we're not checking in with ourselves, that we're not being still, that we're not living consciously to go, how do I change from the inside out to be able to do what I need to do in the world around me? The world around us is requiring us to level up. The world around us is requiring us to change our schedules, to change our thought processes, to change the way that we do life. And if we're not doing it consciously, and if we're not doing it wholeheartedly, and if we're not doing it from a place of saying, I bring the solution to the problem around me, we could get eaten alive. I think that that's what's going on. I think that people are now giving some knee-jerk reactions. We're reacting to what's going on around us. We're acting in our emotional state of anger and resentment and fear and worry and doubt. And we're going to lose the battle if we're not careful. I think more than ever, this is the pattern interrupt that we all didn't know we needed to summit. So let's break this down. We just went around the loop. There's the thought for the day. We need to acclimate in order to summit. So we went around this whole loop. So what is it tactically that we need to do here? Okay, so first and foremost, what I want you to identify is that you're climbing Everest now. You are climbing Everest. The summit is what you want most. I didn't ask what you have currently. I'm not talking about losing your job. I'm not talking about not having a passionate relationship. I'm not talking about the fact that you feel unhealthy. I'm not talking about the craziness with kids and homeschool and this. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about what you want most in all of this. Freedom, growth, and change. Identify what your summit is today, right now. Write down a few things. Not your safety, security, stability, not to just get by, not to just survive, none of that. I'm talking about a higher level summit, a higher level dream, a higher level direction. Once you identify that, then you ask yourself the question, am I willing? Am I willing to move towards growth? Am I willing to move towards change? Am I willing to move towards freedom? Or am I going to be too focused on safety, security, stability? Once you can ask yourself that question, you say, am I willing? And if your answer is yes, then you have to understand what your triggers look like when you need to acclimate. And typically your emotional triggers will look like all the things that I've mentioned. I'm overwhelmed, I feel anxious, depressed, depleted, fearful, worried, doubtful. All of those things are emotional triggers that you need to pay attention to. You need to check your emotions at the door. And if you are feeling those emotional triggers, then you need to recognize it and go, all right, it is time to acclimate. I am being stretched. My capacity is growing. I am having to learn things that I've never had to learn. I'm needing to look at things that I've never had to look at, and I need to acclimate. Once you can get yourself to that place and you realize that you are on a climb and you've hit a base camp and it's time to come and rest and recover, here's how you acclimate appropriately. Number one, you can't take with you the weight of what's got you to where you are to where you're going to go. Just like the climbers on Everest, what got you to where you are will not get you to where you're going, which means that might mean that you physically need to drop weight. That might mean that you mentally need to drop weight. That might mean that your schedule needs to change. You have to look at the routines and habits and patterns that have got you to where you are, and you need to honestly and consciously ask yourselves, can these things go with me? If they can't, you need to drop them. I learned when I traveled the country in an RV that it wasn't about acquiring more. It was about being willing to let go of all the things that I had acquired that made me feel better. Those things will not make that got you to where you are. It won't get you to where you're going. So you've got to be willing to let go of them. Number two, it's an active rest, but it is a rest. It's be still so that you know. It's asking the bigger questions. It's asking the harder questions, and it's creating space to find your answers. Right? What are you dreaming of? What are you imagining? What's on the inside of you? What will create fulfillment? What are the steps that you need to take? These are big questions. They're meaty. They're hard. And if you don't know what question to ask, again, email me and I will send you a list of questions that you need to be asking yourself in this phase of being still and knowing. Number third, you've got to get your immunity system built. I know I'm not even going to go there because now COVID's like a big political issue. Here's what I know to be true. Your immune system requires that you be healthy. You have to be healthy to have higher levels of energy, to eat the better food, whether it's you remove gluten and dairy and sugar, but you've got to start to give your body the food and nutrition it needs in order to get through this crazy epidemic. The way that we fight disease, let's put it that way, is through a healthier immune system. The way that you are going to get through this is that you feed your body the things that it needs. Intermittent fasting, right? Healthier food choices, making sure that you're moving your body physically, doing the things that is heightening your levels of immunity so you can overcome the disease that's going on around us. Okay, then the last thing that I want you to do in order to acclimate is that you need to mentally become stronger. You need to prep yourself that even in an active rest, that you are going to get up and you are going to move again, and you have got to have a mental routine. The way that you purify your heart, the way that you hear your dreams is by mentally purifying your mind. You have got to master your mind. I have a 26-day challenge on my website right now. It's $97. And if you go, it's $97. And for 26 days, you are going to purify your mind. Why? To get to your heart. In order to accomplish the things that you haven't done, in order to go where you've never gone, in order to be someone that you're yet to be, in order to change from the inside out instead of the outside in, you've got to understand what it takes to mentally condition yourself. You've got to renew your mind every single day. And I don't mean on Instagram. Thank you for watching. I don't mean on YouTube. Thank you for watching. I mean picking up the Bible. I mean getting alone with yourself. I mean thinking on thoughts, not just having some mantra that sounds good. I'm talking about the thoughts and beliefs that will make you good from the inside out. Doing a mental conditioning day in and day out, day in and day out, day in and day out, so you can overcome anything that stands in your way. This is how you acclimate. Your capacity is being stretched right now. No, there's no questions asked. Look at how far you've come in these last 4 months. If you consider all the things that we've experienced, it's mind-boggling. And the only way that we sustain this is by continuing to let our minds be blown so we can get deeper within ourselves to recognize that we carry the change from the inside out. We carry the solutions from the inside out, that the God in us has the solutions to the problems around us. But if we're not acclimating and we're getting stretched so thin and we're tired and we're lonely and we're depleted, we don't make good decisions from this place. So if we don't acclimate, we can't go to the next base camp. So I encourage you to acclimate today. And like I said, if you want more on this concept, I will put my email in this link, and I want you to email me direct, and I will send you the full chapter on what it means to actually acclimate. Offer up gratitude, my final step in this process today. Offer up gratitude for how far you've come. None of us have ever experienced these months like we have. Nobody could have done this well. Nobody has the antidote or the answer. But here's what I can say. And here's what I just did this week. If you can offer up gratitude for all that you've done, all that you are, all that God is, and holding us in the palm of his hand, no matter how crazy this is, if you can offer up gratitude, you are going to open yourself up for the ability to continue to move forward. But I'm going to need you to acclimate. I need you to catch up with yourself. I need you to take a couple of deep breaths. I need you to rest. I need you to recover. I need you to reset and rethink so we can continue our climb. Because I'd love to say that it's going to get easier, but I'm not sure that it is. But when we become stronger from the inside out, I think we prepare ourselves to do the climb in a much better way. So I encourage you today to acclimate. That's how we adapt to change. We let our internal selves catch up with what's going on around us so that we can start leading the things that are around us from the inside out. It's my thought for the day. Let's acclimate.